Hello and welcome. My name is Ditech, CTO at DVS, and today we're going to take a look at the temperature detection camera. Many of you are claiming this to be a fever detection camera, but this is aimed at detecting humans' temperatures, which therefore could lead to a fever. It isn't a fever detection camera per se, it's just marketing terminology. So I've got one of the bullet cameras. We've got this available in handheld, bullet and turret. I've chosen the turret for today. There's two variants available, a 3mm and a 6mm, also a 10 and a 15 in the higher end bullet cameras, but we're going to focus on the eco thermal range. So 3mm up to 1.5 meters accurate measurement distance, and the 6mm up to 3 meters. So I'm going to go for the 3mm version. That's what I've chosen for myself today. So inside the box itself, you get all of the usual fitment, so your screws, your back box, foam pad, etc., drill template manual, a back box. So we're going to fit the back box to this speaker stand effectively. So we're going to deploy this at my front entrance. So back box will be mounted on there. Bullet camera itself, standard thermal bullet housing. We'll take the wrapper off. So you'll see it's a bi-spectrum, so thermal and day-night camera, 4 megapixel. It's got the audible warning and the flashing light trigger in there, so when the temperature is detected over the threshold, it will warn the person and any others that are around it to do secondary screening. This is like the primary frontline device, so we'll detect abnormal temperatures or what we perceive to be abnormal temperatures. Therefore, secondary screening is definitely most recommended using an accurate handheld device available from us or any other medically approved device. What you also have to remember is people with higher temperatures can display fever, but also people with lower temperatures. There's also the ability to increase your temperature on your skin surface via the act of running. Not me, I don't run, but I will try and prove that concept using a heat gun. So you have to take into consideration there are mitigating factors into this. So it is advised that this is part of a solution rather than standalone. Okay, so bullet camera to be fitted on here, measuring the distance 1.5 meters away, and we'll create a little isolation zone. The next thing you'll see is me fitted this on there, and then the web browser and the functionality through IMS 4200. Okay, so we have the camera fitted on the pole. It's looking directly at my doorway, which is behind you, behind the camera. Cable tied down the tripod, standard tripod, bolted to it, nothing special about it, freely available. Connected into a PoE switch over there, so standard PoE. On the camera you do have alarm inputs and outputs, audio, etc. 12 volt if you need it, SD card under there, but like I said, you do have the flashing audible warning built into the camera as well, with the collar adjustment for the static there. Turret will be exactly the same. Other than that, I'm going to set you up now onto the laptop, go through the web browser setup, and then we're going to look at doing the 4200 notifications. I don't have a temperature calibrator black box unit, as people are calling them, in this model. This model claims to be 0.5 degrees accurate, so you can have that out of the box without the black box heat emitting unit and have it at 0.5 degrees. We are bringing the black box unit in, which will bring the accuracy down to 0.3. For those of you that accuracy is very critical and you want that 0.2 degrees, we'll have the black box unit. So typically that'll be set up the opposite side of the camera looking back at it, and that uses that calibrated unit as a reference temperature set point. Without it, it's 0.5 degrees, so still I think relatively accurate for this application, but again we can improve on that. I'm going to have to use a temperature probe to measure my temperature, but I'll show you that as I do it. So camera on pole, I've measured 1.5 meters, which is the distance on the 3mm lens. So you can see there, I've used the measuring tape to get it 1.5 meters distance. We've got it, my laptop set up there, so we can do some of the setup for the web browser, and it will alarm through to Height Connect as well as email if I wanted to. The process on this is I'll come through the door, you come straight onto the camera, so you have the targets move directly in front of the camera, toward the camera for the best accuracy. We're not going to use the black box calibrator, that can be a separate video. Other than that, that's the thought process, so you can understand how I get into it. Okay, and welcome back. So we have fitted the camera like you've seen. It's on the network and we've web browsed into it. It's actually on the external network, ready to send push notifications and emails as required. So first thing, straight into it. So this is the thermal camera. There's two cameras built into one. It's the bi-spectrum model, so day-night camera 4 megapixel, and then the low-res thermal that we use for the temperature detection. So let me just stop that. Into configuration, if you're used to the Hikvision product, it's a very easy product to set up. They've done a lot of the settings for you in the factory. Brand new product, so it should be on the latest firmware, but just check that it is on the latest firmware. So that's the model there, 3mm lens, so the 1.5 meters or up to 1.5 meters detection distance, and it's got the built-in flashing audible and light alarm. One thing I would say is if you wanted to email out, I would change the device name to whatever is appropriate to the site you're on, because that will be in the body of the email that you receive, and it might make a little bit more sense other than just saying thermal camera. But that's by the by. Unit settings, you can set whether it's degrees Celsius, and the distance measurement is centimeters, millimeters, or feet. So we're going to use the default degrees Celsius and millimeters. And we've also set the time. I've set the time because I've added it to an NVR in the building here, so we can add to any NVR for recording purposes. I've added it to a FaceRec NVR. I'm going to do a little demonstration of that shortly. But what I would say is in the local settings, so enable all of this functionality here. So when you're in the live view of the web browser, you'll see the box around the face and the temperature box in the OSD itself on the web browser. By default, a lot of them are turned off. So just enable all those to make your life a little bit easier. Again, always check to see if this is the current firmware. As of today, it is, but as time goes on, they may improve it or add some functionality in. So we might need to adjust that firmware. Under maintenance, we can reboot, default, export the parameters, import, upgrade the firmware, etc. And what you have got is the system services enable supplement light. So it's the IR light if you want that. And VCA resource type is set for body thermometry, not temperature measurement, but you can change the mode to temperature measurement. It will reboot and it'll be the standard temperature measurement VCA that you get on the standard product. This has been optimized for body thermometry, and it comes defaulted out of the box. So just make sure that is selected. Okay, under network, default network settings that you need to put on for your site there. And then under the advanced settings, I filled out the email because I'm going to get this to email me whenever somebody has got an elevated temperature detected. Platform access, I've added it to Hike Connect, and again, that will push notification to the app should I want it to, which I am. And then integration protocol if you're using third-party equipment. Video and audio settings, so 4 megapixel, 25 frames a second, H.265, and I've done the thermal for H.265, 25 frames a second, and upscale to 720p, even though it's low-res thermal. You've got audio settings. If you're using audio, do this as needed. Region of interest and metadata settings. The metadata settings will require you to reboot this into VCA temperature mode. It doesn't need it for the body thermometry. I think I'm saying that right. Okay. On to the image settings. Again, a lot of you will be very familiar with these settings, but we'll go through it for those that you are just using this product specifically for this application. Adjust the exposure, day-night settings, backlight, white balance, image, and video adjustment. That's for the day-night camera specifically. You can adjust that specifically for your site and application. The defaults are normally fine. OSD, I put the model number of the camera in there like I do for all my videos, so you can easily see in the OSD what the model is and then Google it for the SEO. But you can put whatever you like in there. It could be a contact number, your company name, whatever that might be. Change it to day, month, year if you're in the UK, because the default is the US way. So it's month, day, year. And you need to do that for both the thermal and the day-night camera. Again, if you've got an area that's sensitive, for instance, if this was a glass panel that we didn't want to see in, I can actually draw an area and mask that off. That privacy mask will appear in the live video and playback if you've added it to an NVR, so it obscures any sensitive data. I'm just going to remove that because we don't actually need it. Picture overlay. You can upload a set of instructions, so it could be a simple JPEG that says call this number, so it could be security or healthcare worker, it could be your company logo, it could be anything really, anything you think may be applicable to the operator rather than just your company logo or an out-of-hours service number if the product isn't performing correctly and they may need to call you to come and take a look at it. Either way, you can put whatever you like in there. DPC, dead pixel correction, picture in picture, so you can put a picture in picture. Then if you do it with this mode, it puts the thermal image into the top corner, but you can move that around wherever you want that to be. So if I want it in this corner, click save and it will move it. So some people like that mode. I'm going to put it back to normal. I don't particularly like that. And then with camera 2, the thermal module, you can actually details overlap it and you can basically image fusion the daylight camera details into this. Not my cup of tea, so I'm going to put it back to normal, click save, and that will come back to normal. So VCA rural display, you can change the colors on that, but this isn't really going to do anything because that's for the VCA temperature detection rather than this operating mode, body thermometry. I said it right. Okay, so moving on to the event. Under basic events, we've got motion detection, video tampering, alarm input and alarm output events. You can actually change on the newer models and hardware. You can actually now select if it's normally open or normally closed for the output type. We only used to have it as normally open going closed, but now you can actually change the way that works, which is really nice, and trigger it manually. If you want to trigger to test, you might have a light or a siren connected to this, or a trapdoor perhaps that opens up and people fall in, who knows, but you can actually test that manually. Exception rules, the flashing alarm light output is you can have it flashing or solid, how long it flashes for seconds wise, and the flashing frequency, and also the brightness. So turn that up to 100. So this is when the abnormal or a temperature is detected over the threshold, which I'll show you in a minute. The sound and the flashing light can be set to trigger, so it gives a warning for the person who's detected to move aside and get secondary line testing. Audible alarm output, you've got the temperature measurement, and then you've got simply body temperature abnormality. So far that's the only ones that we've uploaded. Maybe there's going to be a custom ones you can upload or some different ones, but that's all you actually need for this operation. You can say how many times the message is enunciated and the volume of that, and when it's armed, because you may only want it during certain hours, and outside certain hours you're not so interested because it could be, I don't know, for whatever application you don't need it 24/7. Adjust as necessary and click save. Smart event is audio exception details. If you're using a microphone that's connected into this, you can use the audio exception detection. Not going to go through that today. We'll do a separate video. I have done a separate video on this. It's just a way of setting the norm for either sudden sound increase or decrease. If you're using an SD card and you want to store the footage locally or the events, then you need to just fill this in applicably. Again, very straightforward. I've added it to an NVR instead, but you can do both. You can have an SD card and add it to an NVR, or either or. It's entirely up to you. Now, the next menu down is the body thermometry menu. So what you'll see is under basic settings, we've ticked enable temperature measurement, enable color temperature. We can actually turn that off. It doesn't actually affect the performance of the model at all. Display temperature info on stream, yes. Add in original data and add on stream, so select that, yes. Data refresh interval, I put it to 1 second. You can choose which one of those is applicable to you. The default is 3. Then you've got the unit degrees C, Kelvin or Fahrenheit. Well, we selected the degree C earlier in the menu, and you can't change the temperature range because it's specifically set for body thermometry. So we're looking at a very small temperature range. The emissivity you set for human skin, which is 0.98. So if I just show you something quickly, this is a common emissivity reference, and you can see human skin is 0.98. We actually set that as 0.98, but there are some other emissivity references that are common to this industry if you were doing temperature measurement outside of the human body temperature stuff. And the distance is the target distance from the camera to the target itself is 1.5 meters, which I showed you. I've used a tape measure to measure the distance and then draw that detection line on the floor itself, and that's 1.5 meters. You adjust that as applicable. The 3mm lens is up to 1.5 meters for the accuracy, and the 6mm is up to 3 meters. And you've got the 10 and 15s, which increase that distance further, but there's a point where the distance is too far and you're detected them too far away and can't really do anything with that person who's approaching. Okay, moving on. So, body thermometry configuration. So, camera 1, we've by default enable face detection and display temperature are both enabled. Now, you don't have to have those enabled, but for purposes of this demonstration and setup, just leave them ticked. You don't need to untick them. It doesn't give you anything additional, so just leave them ticked. It'll give you the best and both best options on the video itself. The configuration is only set to targeting. We can't change that. And then generation speed and sensitivity is generation speed is how fast the target moves towards the camera once they're detected. I've left it at 5 because generally that's set a walk into fast walking pace, but that can be adjusted as per application. And then the sensitivity is the higher the sensitivity, the easier the target is detected. But if you're having false alarms from other objects that are detected, you can actually lower that sensitivity down. The default is start at 5 on both and work backward if applicable. Alarm temperature is 37.5. Anything over that will be when you get the alarm generated, and that could be from the email, push notification, an alarm output which triggers a siren, trapdoor or a light, etc. from there. Camera 2, so on the linkage action itself, just to show you, I've got it for 24/7, but you can adjust applicable to your site or application. And then I've got it to send email, because I filled that in earlier, notify surveillance center, which is a push notification to the app, upload to the FTP memory card, if I was using an FTP or an SD card, and trigger the flashing light and audible warning that's built into the camera directly. So again, that's really important, and you'll see that operating on the video. And then trigger alarm output, if I want to do that, outputs 1 and 2, and then trigger the recording if I'm using an SD card that's built into the camera. Moving on to camera 2. Go back to basic settings. Move to camera 2. What you'll see here is there's 2 options now. One, if I'm using the black body correction unit. If I am using that, that would be positioned over here looking back at the camera itself, and what I would do is enable the black body correction, the distance it is from the camera, the set output of the camera, and the emissivity value of that unit. What I would do then is draw my area, so I click draw and put this blue dot over the black box correction unit itself, so we know where it is in the image. It gives a constant output as a reference, and it increases the accuracy from 0.5 to 0.3. So if you want that added 0.2%, we can do that, but it is an additional cost to it. But it's as simple as drawing that dot over the black body configurator, setting these parameters, which you'll be able to get. And then if you're not using the black body configuration unit, body temperature compensation, use enable that. Compensation is auto, manual calibration 0, and environment temperature auto. So the environment temperature is 17.7. I've got the aircon on here at a steady 18 degrees. It's suggested that when you install this, you put it in a stable environment. So whether it's an aircon or no aircon, the environment temperature is quite stable, and it doesn't swing drastically between too hot, too cold, and very quickly. So again, set it to auto on both. If you do need to do, it's suggested if you're putting this, the general parameters are this should work out of the box. If you want to manually correct this to show or calibrate it so it's more accurate for your site, because it is in maybe an unstable environment, or you're just happier that you have manually calibrated this, the way to do it is get a calibrated ear thermometer, a medically approved one. Take your reference temperature using that in your ear and note it down. And then do it with 5 separate people, walk in front of the camera, note that the detected temperature down, and compare it to the temperature recorded on the thermometer. And then you can actually put in the manual correction value here. So if the camera, for instance, is detecting you at 35 degrees, but you're actually 35.7, then you can put 0.7 degrees manual calibration in there, and it will add that to that value, so it becomes a much truer value compared to what we're actually recording on the camera. So that's one way of doing calibration. You should suggest to do that to 5 to 10 people, so you get that mean average. And you should also, quite importantly, when you turn the camera on, leave it 30 minutes before you actually start taking temperatures on it. It needs to warm up and stabilize in that environment to get the constant temperature that's in the camera itself. So please make sure you're not deploying this and then using it straight away out of the box. You should, obviously, by the time you've installed it and done the setup and testing, it's going to be past 30 minutes, but be aware you do need that 30-minute window at the beginning for the camera to stabilize for best performance. So I hope that makes sense. Anything else you can clarify with me later. And then again, linkage action is as we've already stated. If I go into live view and press play, What you can see is the blue detection box there. So just to go back under the configuration, what I've actually done on camera 1 is drawn this yellow detection area within the red detection area. So as long as you draw the yellow detection box within this red box, you can actually narrow down your defined area of detection. So say for instance this glass, we didn't want that glass in because it was reflecting objects off it. You can take that glass out, which will narrow down that applicable area for detection, and it may reduce your false alarms and focus it directly on the doorway, for instance, that we're coming through, just to make sure that makes sense to you all. Probably doesn't, because I normally don't. If I press live view now, you can see the 4 megapixel day-night camera and the thermal camera low res. Okay, so if I go and stand in front of it, you'll see the principle of this working. So I'll go and stand by the 1 meter line, so I'm 1.5 meters away, and you'll see what that looks like. So I stand 1.5 meters away, and you can see the box goes around with the temperature up in the corner. So you can see now that it's going to be constantly monitoring my temperature. If I move away, that goes. Again, if I go through the doorway, so I come into the building, stand on the line, wait for 5 seconds, and I'm clear. No flashing light or audible warning, which means I'm not elevated, so presumed that I don't have a elevated temperature, which could indicate I have a fever. Of course, you can do secondary testing with a different device if you want to confirm that. If you do have if the alarm does go off, which I'm going to show you in a minute, then you'd have a sign that says please step to one side and go into an isolation area where further testing can be done to establish whether you are safe to proceed or not. So things you have to be aware of: the environment it's installed in, plus the environment you've come from. So if it's really hot or really cold outside, that could affect your skin temperature, which could give a false reading. If you've just been for a run, or if you have cold water, for instance, perspiration on your skin, that can affect it. So you do have to be aware there are factors that could be mitigating against this. So what I've actually done is taken my handy, you can see, Bosch heat gun. I suggest highly you don't do this at home. I'm doing this on purpose of an experiment. So I'm going to blow this really hot air into my face now to give that elevated temperature on the surface of my skin, and then stand in front of the camera, and hopefully that will have the effect that it will trigger the camera as necessary. What I'm going to do is make the video larger so you can see this in more detail. So give me 2 seconds. Okay, so you can see the camera up there ready. So I'm going to start my industrial strength. Please don't try this at home. This is literally as an experiment, but it will show you what I mean by this. So that's getting up to temperature. Blow this in my face for 20 to 30 seconds. It feels like I'm on holiday in the tropics, which is absolutely lovely. And if only exercise was as easy as that. So if I stand in front of the camera now. So you can see my face was quite elevated in temperature there. It does feel like I've stood in front of a blowtorch, quite warm. The same applies if you cool your face down. So I've got some cooling wipes, which I'm just going to go and get now. So give me 2 seconds and I'll cool my face down to show you the difference that can make to the temperature being lowered. Okay, so I am back. I've actually got a bowl of cold water here. So I'll quickly cool my face down. Don't know how well this is going to work. And if I look at the camera there, all in the name of science, you can see that I do have a slightly lower temperature than normal. So again, just be aware that things can affect it. If you've been external things can affect that. So what I would say as well is 2 things I want to show you quickly. So an email has come through, so it tells me where it's come from, the serial number, temperature measurement alarm, and from the actual details of it. I can actually click on that and I get attached images, so I get to see it's me that's triggered it, and it tells me the temperature ingrained in the image, plus also the thermal image itself. So it quickly helps me identify what, where, or who this person has triggered it, so you can go and isolate them if they're not in that area, the holding area, for instance. So that's an added bonus. And we also get on the Hike Connect app, you can see there that I can also get a push notification with playback if it's supported on an SD card or through the recorder. There's a high temperature alarm push notification to the app as well. And it also works for IMS 4200, so I'm quickly going to get the IMS 4200 up, so give me 2 seconds. What you'll see here is I've got this added under the main view. We've got the 2 images there, now it's loaded. So I'm going to quickly warm my face using this heat gun, so a little quick trip to the tropics again. But don't try this at home. Quickly stand in front of the camera. So that's triggered the camera because of the elevated camera temperature. You'll see there you get the live view, time and date from the camera. There's some information where it's come from. Again, double click on that and you can see the temperature within the image if you need to. Again, if I want to, I can click handle and put down person isolated, click OK, and then when I finish with that, click exit. What you can do then in the event center, click on event search, choose this camera, and it will show you all of the events that have happened and any of the notes that you've done. So this is the most recent one with the updated notes on there. If you need anything, please contact us here at DVS. Other than that, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please take care of yourselves. Please look after others and please stay tuned.